Hello everyone, my name is Manolis Sfinarolakis, the founder of RealityCrowdTV, and welcome to a special program brought to you by Vicken, the virtual incubator and crowdfunding network entitled Crowdfunding for Social Good. We have an amazing webinar tonight with two great guests, but before I introduce our guests, I just want to share with the audience a couple of ground rules. There are multiple ways that you can ask questions during the webinar. If you're watching from Google Hangouts on Air, you can use the Q&A application that is built within the Google Plus platform. If you're watching from the RealityCrowdTV website, you'll be able to actually ask a question within the embedded video. And if you're watching within Vicken, the virtual incubator and crowdfunding network, you can join the chat room, which is located under the Connect tab, and you'll be able to chat with others in the community as well as ask any questions that you might have. So crowdfunding is an amazing movement, as many of you know who are watching this webinar, and one of the best sectors in crowdfunding is the social good movement. So I'd like to just begin by introducing our guests, and they are both experts in this social good arena. Our first guest comes from Utah. His name is Devin Thorpe. He is a Forbes contributor, and he is the founder of Your Mark on the World Center. And Devin, please introduce yourself to the audience, and thank you very much for joining us.
Manolis, it is an honor and a privilege to be here to participate with you. You have really become the master of this domain, and I really appreciate you allowing me to be on the show today with Stephanie. I'm excited to hear from her as well. But to answer your question briefly in terms of my background, I come at crowdfunding with a lot of passion. I've been doing this for a number of years, but like so many people, I was intrigued with crowdfunding the first time I visited Kickstarter and backed a film. And it only took 2 years to get my copy of the DVD, but it really was sort of a love at first bite for me. I started covering crowdfunding as part of my beat at Forbes nearly 3 years ago, and discovered something interesting. When I would write about crowdfunding, a lot of people would read my posts. So anyway, I really dove in deep with crowdfunding back in 2013 as a result, and wrote a book about it. I've since launched goodcrowd.info, a website providing news on the crowdfunding for social good space. And so it's an honor to be here and participate with you.
Absolutely, Devin, and you are, to me, you're a mentor to me in this industry. You actually taught me how to do Google Hangouts, so I owe you a lot for everything that you've taught me in the process. And I read your articles, and I'm just humbled. So thank you again for joining us. Now our next guest is a very special guest. She comes from us all the way from Cambodia. We have Stephanie Arrowsmith, Head of Strategic Partnerships for crowdfunding website StartSomeGood. And Stephanie, please introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Thank you so much, Manolis, for organizing this and for having us. Like Devin said, you've done a great job with RealityCrowdTV, and it's such an honor to be on here. And alongside Devin as well, because he's the pioneer in social good crowdfunding, and I've known about Devin for a very long time and read his books on social good crowdfunding. So what a pleasure to be here with both of you. So hi everyone, I'm Stephanie. As Manolis mentioned, I work with StartSomeGood, and we're a global crowdfunding platform dedicated to exclusively to social impact projects. So that's the kind of niche that we cover. We tend to work with NGOs, solo entrepreneurs, change makers of any kind, basically anyone who has a social impact project that they want to start. And we've worked in over 35 different countries around the world. We're truly global. Exciting to be part of this. I've been part of the social good crowdfunding movement for just over a year and helped launch over 100 crowdfunding campaigns within this space. So I've seen all sorts of campaigns, and it's been really inspiring to work one-on-one with people launching great ideas around the world.
Excellent, Stephanie. Thank you again for joining us, and I know it's very early in the morning over there, so again, thank you so much. Even though you look great, it looks like you're like all wide awake, so you make it look easy.
I'm being prepared.
For our audience, maybe our audience doesn't understand what the term social good means. So I'd like to actually bring this over to Devin. Devin, what is social good crowdfunding? What type of entrepreneurs are these people? What type of projects are they? Kind of give us your definition of what a social good crowdfunding project is. And I'm sorry, Devin, you have to unmute yourself. Sorry about that.
There we go. Sorry.
No problem.
I was, the social good, I think I would define broadly as anything that has a social, that is community, global benefit to it. So whether that is a strictly philanthropic initiative, a donation to the Red Cross, or whether that is a social entrepreneur who is like Tom Shoes, that is doing a buy one give one kind of initiative. There's kind of a broad spectrum, and I use a very inclusive definition for the kinds of projects I cover, both at Forbes and at goodcrowd.info. Of course, I think Stephanie at StartSomeGood uses a little narrower definition, but that's one of the reasons I love the website, because it's perfect for so many people, and we had to let her describe what the perfect StartSomeGood project is, because it really is uniquely positioned for a set of people.
Absolutely, Stephanie. Go right ahead. What is your definition?
So our definition, I guess, is broad but narrow in a sense. We try to curate a community of people who are really dedicated to creating a social impact or positive impact through their project that they're creating. We need to stay broad and stay inclusive to people who may not have, because I guess this is the beauty of crowdfunding, is that it needs to be accessible to people. So whether you're at the stage of starting your project for the first time and you may not have charity status or some kind of legal status that would allow you to get funding in some other way, crowdfunding needs to stay accessible for those kinds of people. So this can be, in terms of how we define social good, anyone who's creating positive impact can demonstrate that through the activities of their project. And to be honest, sometimes this does overlap with other areas, for example, arts, because you can really argue that arts creates positive community effect as well. So we really look at it on a case-by-case basis. We try to keep it broad, and we really invite people to showcase their ideas with us and share what they're trying to do with us. And then we try to also narrow it and make sure that we're supporting campaigns that truly have positive benefit to the community as well.
Absolutely, and in StartSomeGood's particular case, we're talking about donation and rewards-based crowdfunding. So this isn't the equity crowdfunding realm, although there's also social entrepreneurs in that realm as well. And so, kind of to summarize what both of you said, it really is entrepreneurs who not only are creating a business for profit, but their underlying basis for doing so is because they want to make some sort of positive change in the world. The paradigm previously, from what I understand, has always been the shareholders are the #1 priority. But with the new population of millennials and the people below the millennials, they are not necessarily so much concerned about profit. They're more so concerned about, let's make a difference and the profit will come. I think that's kind of the way that they're viewing it. By doing good, that they will make a profit eventually. And it doesn't always have to be about profit. It could be a nonprofit startup that's also a social entrepreneur as well. So it's really an amazing new paradigm shift of the way people are viewing business and nonprofits. It's not so much about who can make the most money. It's about who can make the most positive change in the world. And did you want to say something there, Stephanie?
No, absolutely. And I was just wanted to make a comment that even in the world of social entrepreneurship, I don't think anyone has ever pinned down one specific definition. I've seen, even just with people I've spoken to, leaders in social entrepreneurship have very different definitions of what this means. Does it mean we value the impact we're creating alongside profit, or the impact more than profit? So there's a couple of different, variations, but I think that, like you said, the underlying value is that it's acknowledged that your existence relies on creating some social value. to the world or to the community.
You got it. Absolutely. And
If I could I just add a thought there, Manolis?
Yes, you may. Yeah.
So I think Stephanie hit on a key thing, in terms of trying to find the definitions. One of the things I often focus on is intentionality. There are all kinds of businesses that create social benefits. Certainly employing people is a social benefit, and so virtually all businesses do that, right? But the idea to set out to accomplish some specific social good, I think in and of itself is one of those bright lines I like to use for deciding whether someone is a social entrepreneur. Of course, even as I say that, I recognize I was at an entrepreneurial contest at the University of Utah. I did some judging there 2 weeks ago, and there were 20 entrepreneurs who were finalists. Of the 20 who were finalists, and this was not a social entrepreneurship contest, about half were, in fact, objectively social ventures, but many of those entrepreneurs didn't think of themselves as social entrepreneurs. It's inherent in what you were describing, Manolis, of the day. It's just simply the case that young people are focused on that social impact along with their entrepreneurship in ways that my generation, frankly, wasn't. So it's exciting to see. But I love to look at intentionality as kind of a test of whether someone is a social entrepreneur.
I definitely agree with that, and I think you can definitely see that when you have social entrepreneurs who really go out there and tackle a problem. They see a problem and they have an intention to create a solution around that. And so, I definitely agree. I think that intentionality is a brilliant way to look at it.
Absolutely, and on that note, actually, that brings up kind of our next question here. And Devin, you were actually mentioning it a little while ago. What have you seen, Devin? You've interviewed for your Mark on the World Center, as well as for Forbes. You've interviewed hundreds of different social entrepreneurs, and so you have that amazing insight into kind of what are the trends, like what are the issues that social entrepreneurs are tackling that you kind of see on a recurring basis that is kind of a trend. What type of things are people trying to tackle?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. That one of the most significant trends I see is that we are moving away from a little bit, but meaningfully, away from a relatively simple concept of social venture that might include any venture that decides to dedicate or devote a percentage of profits to a cause. That still happens, but more and more people are focusing on identifying businesses whose intrinsic business model actually addresses the problem, so that you can never be in conflict with your social mission. In theory, a company that chooses to give a percentage of profits to, or a percentage of revenue to a cause, could at some point end up in conflict with that mission if the company's viability is threatened by the commitment to fund the cause. But if the cause is served by the day-to-day activities of the business, that is, the products are the solution to the problem, then there's never a conflict. The profits and revenues become the scorecard for impact. And so I think what we're seeing in the social entrepreneurship world is more and more people are seeking to play in a space where they can do exactly that and have impact through the business itself and not as an ancillary aspect to the business. Of course, there are still people doing it the other way. I don't mean to suggest that's completely gone away, and there are some great social entrepreneurs doing that. Blake Mycoskie at Tom Shoes is really the poster child for that model. It hasn't gone away, but what I see more and more of is this the intrinsic focus on impact.
And I will say one thing to add to that, because you mentioning the mission of the organization. There is actually a new legal structure known as a benefit corporation. And so benefit corporations are for-profit entities, but they have at its core a mission, and it's usually a social mission. And that mission is allowed to trump the shareholder value. If if the corporation is making a decision that will go against its mission but will increase profits exponentially, the person in charge of the mission and determining is that right or wrong for the mission can say, sorry shareholders, that's against what our mission is. We're not going to make as much money as you'd like right now. Have you seen that also, Devin?
Oh, yes. I think there are on the order of 15 or 20 states now that have a legal B Corp structure, and in any business can apply to the organizing authority and qualify and become a certified B Corp. So yes, it's a very exciting space. They do require some modest amount of governance, so that you actually have to satisfy them that you are complying with your own mission, that you're focused on that adequately in order to maintain your B Corp status. But it's a wonderful thing. There is a similar but different designation called an L3C that was conceived of for a specific tax purpose related to investments from foundations. And the IRS has never adopted the rule that would make it effective, but there are, again, I think 9 or maybe as many as a dozen states that have adopted L3C laws, so you can form an L3C and operate, but the IRS has never implemented the rule. But it's just a way to signal to the investment community, especially foundations, that you intend to do good. There's no extra governance required in that case. So it probably lacks some of the credibility of the B Corp status, but it offers some of the same signaling. In any case, I see both of those as being really exciting advances in the field of social entrepreneurship.
Wonderful. That's amazing. And so with that primer on what the trends are, now we can actually hear it from the premier social good crowdfunding platform. And Stephanie, what are you seeing? I mean, now you're actually seeing these social entrepreneurs using your platform to achieve their financial goals. So, same question. What are you seeing from the front lines?
So social businesses and social entrepreneurship is definitely growing, and we're seeing a lot of people test their ideas. So trying to get that market validation for their ideas for the first time through crowdfunding and building their initial supporters. That's been one trend, particularly in Australia, that we've seen. And here, where I'm based in Asia, in Asia Pacific, crowdfunding is still quite nascent, but it's really growing, and the culture, the Asian cultures are very used to this sense of collective giving. So it's not quite a new thing, it's just being brought online, and that's what's taking a bit of time. But we're seeing a lot of collective effort behind, for example, disaster response, community building. So there might be community events that people are wanting to run, or rebuilding things that have been destroyed. So we're seeing smaller scale projects like that. But very exciting as well, actually, is I feel that being based here in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, we are sort of in the hub of social enterprise, the social enterprise scene in Asia. So you have a lot of social businesses emerging here. And we've had a number of social businesses crowdfund with us, actually, including a social enterprise circus that helps underprivileged children off the street and to train in the arts and the performing arts so that they can earn a living in these beautiful, beautiful circus performances that are actually now so successful they're traveling to Europe. And right now on our crowdfunding platform, we have a sustainable tour company called Soxabike, and they're buying solar-powered tuk-tuks, which is going to form part of a new tour that they're going to be offering to tourists who come to Cambodia. And this is another, travel-related social enterprise that's growing. So these are some of the trends we're seeing. I think on one hand, we are seeing a lot of social businesses arise from here, and they're looking at the, crowdfunding $50,000 to $100,000 mark. But we're also seeing smaller-based community projects and disaster response projects that are, closer towards the $10,000 to $20,000 mark as well.
Very interesting. And so there's it's not only a U.S.-based phenomenon; it's definitely global. It's happening in Cambodia as well as you mentioned 34 other nations have used your platform, and so I'd like to shift that to kind of discuss some of the opportunities, some of the challenges, but specifically, and I like what StartSomeGood is doing. I reviewed your site. I see that you're providing a lot more education than the majority of platforms. So why do social entrepreneurs choose StartSomeGood? Like what is your reason for StartSomeGood? Like why would someone choose StartSomeGood over another platform?
Yeah, that's a really good question because there are so many platforms out there, and deciding which one works for you is obviously a critical question. But our platform came about because it was addressing an issue for social entrepreneurs. Our two founders, they were social entrepreneurs, and they're working at Ashoka Changemakers, and they were trying to find this middle ground between how do we launch, social impact projects in a more transparent way, in a way that we can also build community, because they saw how crowdfunding captured the tech and the art scene, and they were like, we could do that for social impact as well. And so our unique, I guess what makes us unique and sets us apart is that everyone in our team comes from this social impact background. We really understand what sort of support is required as a social entrepreneur, how to work with limited resources and in a very creative way, how to tell your story in an engaging way that captures the audience that you want. And so I think we really understand the nuances and that background, and can provide really hands-on support. And like you said, we see ourselves more as allies with these change makers and entrepreneurs. We kind of want to work side by side. We don't want to just be a service provider. Here's a website, go and use it. It's more like, hey, come and join our team. What's your vision? What's your dream? Now, how can we help make this happen? And that's how I like to see it, and how everyone on the team likes to see, our role as StartSomeGood. And we're learning along the way, and we really feel that the education aspect, and also what Devin's doing, educating about campaign and how to do crowdfunding right, is a big responsibility in terms of expectation setting and making sure that people have a great experience when they crowdfund, because it can be, and it should be a really empowering, fun, community building experience. You want everyone to, have a positive time crowdfunding.
Absolutely, and you hit it on the head. I mean, I definitely get that feeling when I go to your platform, that you partner with them more than just being the funding mechanism, because in the world of crowdfunding today, it's easy to create a platform. It's hard to create a community, and you guys have created a very good community around social entrepreneurship. So congratulations on all the great work you've done.
Manolis, if I could just add here, I've used StartSomeGood for 2 of my personal crowdfunding campaigns over the years, and I really think it serves a fairly specific niche of people uniquely well. There are a lot of good crowdfunding sites. Many of them are bigger than StartSomeGood. I hate to say that, but it isn't the biggest. But it serves a very specific niche of people better than any other site, I think. And the group it serves is that for-profit social entrepreneur. I think there's no other site on the web that I've discovered that really serves that niche of people better. And so that's the group I always find myself referring to, StartSomeGood.
Great, that's amazing, and to turn to you actually on that point, Devin, you've done your own campaigns, but I believe you also have a program where you help people learn how to crowdfund, especially more so. I believe you have more of a slant towards large organizations. you want to kind of share what that program is and kind of some pitfalls that you see a lot of campaigners going through their first time around?
I do have a lot of ways of sharing some of these insights, Manolis, and I appreciate you asking about that. So I travel around, really around the world, training people on crowdfunding, but I also have some online resources in addition to the information on Good Crowd Info. I have a couple of crowdfunding courses available on at pluralsight.com for people who are interested in really kind of digging into the brass tacks and figuring out how to do this. Especially helpful to people who are coming at this cold. But you know, I think the biggest challenge for people to this day, and I was talking to a good friend who is doing some crowdfunding, and he called me because he was a week into his crowdfunding campaign. He'd raised $50. And he kind of, Devin, what am I doing wrong? You know, I'm tweeting this, I'm putting it out on Facebook, and I'm just getting nothing. And I explained to him that you really have to get some real momentum before social media will do you any good. And that's one of the big myths of crowdfunding, I think, one of the big misunderstandings, is it's still very much an old school fundraising approach of you got to get on the phone, meet people face to face, and send personal emails to get people to donate. After you have sort of a critical mass, I'm sure Stephanie sees this all the time, then you can kind of start to share on social media, and it will work more because the dollars you've raised, the donation count you've got, that validates what you're doing, and then the social media will work, and also the traditional media. You get bloggers writing about you, newspapers, or get on television. Those things will really then take you really to great heights of success. But it really begins, even the most cynical approaches to crowdfunding, I shouldn't call them cynical, but you know, the people that are doing this, you know, the hired guns that are very effective in helping people raise a lot of money for new gadgets, they still will tell you you start by raising the first several $1,000s right from your close friends and family. And I just don't think you can overemphasize that in terms of creating success.
Stephanie, what are your thoughts on that?
I was just nodding the whole way there. 100% agree with that. I think that's the biggest misconception that we try to educate people crowdfunding about, is there are actually no crowds there. There are not anonymous crowds waiting for your campaign to launch so they can donate, and it's always going to come from the initial momentum is going to come from your closest peers first, before it reaches your tribes, before it ever reaches crowds. And it's actually a requirement on our platform to have at least three donations before your campaign can sustain more than 7 days, because that initial support is really critical in actually telling us whether this is going to be a successful campaign or not. Because if you can't get even your closest friends and family to endorse what you're doing and, you know, put there to validate what you're doing, you know, like Devin said, how will the crowd do that? So I think that's a really important point. And if there's one takeaway, you know, from crowdfunding, that's something everyone should know about. It's not about crowds at all.
Very interesting approach by your platform. I think that's brilliant. I mean, you give people a chance to prove that indeed they did the legwork that was needed before the launch. But if they can't get 3 donations within 7 days, then chances are they didn't prepare. They just kind of put up a page, and they were hoping for those anonymous crowds, as you put it, to come on in and just, you know, fund the project. So that is a brilliant strategy, actually. Very, very good. And so let me just check across the board here within our communities to see if there's any questions, because we've gone a nice 30 minutes here. So let me just kind of go into the incubator for a moment. Right now in the incubator we have a fair amount of people. Ron says great point on that last moment. And I'm just going to say, please ask any questions if you have any. So hopefully everyone who's watching in the incubator will start asking some questions.
Manolis, I was wondering very quickly, if I could jump in, could you tell us a bit more about the incubator and whether there are ways that social entrepreneurs or people interested in social impact who are looking to crowdfund can use the incubator?
Sure. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. So the Virtual Incubator and Crowdfunding Network, which that's what the acronym VICN stands for, it's a free community, and I've actually been looking into the benefit corporation model myself because a lot of what we do is very social in nature, and it's really to create a network to create a collaborative community where entrepreneurs can learn how to crowdfund and access the tools and resources they need to take their endeavors to the next level. And so it operates in a way that I like to call the Quora of crowdfunding. If you all know the website Quora, it's a single website with a question and answer application. So one of the most engaging pieces of our community is this questions and answers segment where people are literally able to ask any question they want, and they get answers from either their peers who have gone through crowdfunding or are crowdfunding at the moment, or expert mentors who can additionally prepare them and answer the questions that they have. And so we have over 130 questions already that are asked. So in a way, this is creating the ultimate crowdfunding FAQ. So that's a great way to communicate. And one of the things that we're working on too is creating a platform for people to understand that indeed there's all these different stages of the crowdfunding process that I affectionately call the 9 stages of crowdfunding. And all these different stages, in one way or another, have to happen before the campaign ever launches. So we do advocate about a 3 to 6 month pre-planning process. So to answer your question in a little bit less verbose manner, we are a pre-launch platform. You come to VICN to learn, to prepare, and to do crowdfunding the right way, not because I'm telling you that I'm teaching you how to do it the right way, but because the collective community is crowdsourcing their knowledge base and helping people in a collaborative manner to really understand how this process works. So don't take my word for it. Just take the word of the experts, take the word of the data, and that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to demystify crowdfunding. So I hope that answers your. Does that help explain it a little bit, Stephanie?
No, that's excellent. I haven't come across a platform like that before that's dedicated, to providing that comprehensive education and crowdsource, information that you can argue is the most important, because these are people who have gone through the crowdfunding process before or have their own experiences to share. So that's wonderful. I'm really glad that you guys are dedicated to doing that.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, it's just fun. It's a lot of fun. I mean, the friendships that are being made in the community are genuine. I speak to people regularly, and it's just a fun community to be in. So thank you for that. And so let me just check back in very quick. Want to see if there was any feedback. Okay. And so let's move on to kind of what the future holds. And Devin, I know we're not fortune tellers, but if there's anyone who can see the future, it's you, because you have such a huge overall view of the industry with the different organizations you work with the interviews that you've done. So where do you see crowdfunding going, and where do you see social good crowdfunding going now and into the future?
Well, there are a couple of things I would predict. One is that as equity crowdfunding gets underway, we will see a surprising amount of success in the equity crowdfunding space in social entrepreneurship. So the very people who are using StartSomeGood, as they scale their businesses, they'll be going to equity crowdfunding sites in order to raise money to really scale their operations, because they can raise so much more inequity. So that's the first prediction I would make. And the second is that we will see nonprofits getting into crowdfunding in an interesting way to compete with, most especially, GoFundMe. So GoFundMe, and there are a number of competitors that do similar things, but GoFundMe is most commonly used by people who've been hit by some sort of personal tragedy. Whether it's bad teeth, their home was flooded or burned to the ground, or the kids got cancer or whatever, those kinds of stories are pitched on GoFundMe. And there is a problem with that model, and that is that there's no one there to vet and arbitrate the need. And so what we're seeing is the people who are most successful in raising money on GoFundMe need it the least. I hate to say that. But the people who need it the most have no network. They have no ability to raise the first $100 or $1,000, and so they get zero. And yet they are the most needy. And so what I think will happen in the coming years is more and more nonprofit organizations will adopt those people and use their own networks on their behalf to help them raise only the money they need. Not tens and tens of thousands more, but if you need $1,500 for new teeth, they're going to raise you the $1,500 for new teeth, and then they'll cut it off, because they'll want to use their network to help the next guy whose kid has cancer and needs $3,000 because the insurance won't cover that much. So those are the two trends I see. So equity crowdfunding in the social good space, I think that's going to be huge over the next few years, and I think more nonprofits jumping in to sort of arbitrate and help the poor, struggling people who are not being successful on sites like GoFundMe.
Devin, I agree with you wholeheartedly in both approaches, and I actually want to comment on the second one. I was thinking of an organization that was needed in that same regard. I don't think I own the domain name anymore, just because when I first started in this crowdfunding movement, as I'm sure you did as well, I went ahead and I bought 150 domain names because my mind was spinning of how many different ways, you can help people through this industry. And one of the domain names, which I don't think I own anymore, so if anyone's watching, go right ahead and buy it. Fundingforwellness.org was my kind of idea, and it was the seal of approval of and the vetting organization that would run a campaign for someone who couldn't afford some sort of medical treatment, mental illness, whatever the case may be. They would vet the person. They would actually handle the money. But in the case where funding was oversubscribed, it would go into the fundingforwellness.org account that would then go into fund other similar circumstances. So I share that view. I think someone will go out and create an organization like that, and it'll fundamentally change the world.
Yeah, there is an organization, I think off the top of my head, called wishbone.org that does exactly what we're describing for a very narrow niche, a very narrow social need, and it's around sending high school students to summer college programs. So, virtually every college in the country has programs, whether it's debate camp, music camp, whatever, all those kinds of things that you go anywhere from a week to a month or more and get some sort of specialized training. And really, for a lot of students, it's life-changing. It gets them on campus. They get exposure to what it's like to go to college. Well, of course, only relatively affluent, at least middle-income kinds of families can come up with the thousands of dollars that it takes to send a kid to that kind of camp. And so this organization that I'm describing, again, I think it's wishbone.org, but I'll double-check. But that organization, what they do is they identify inner-city school students that can't afford to go. Then they negotiate with the university where they want to go participate in the camp. Usually they can get a 50% discount. And then the third thing they do is they get the student to identify a mentor that then becomes responsible to make sure that the student actually uses the money to go to the camp, has a successful experience at the camp, and comes home a successful with a successful experience. So it really is a high-touch crowdfunding experience and really making a great difference in these kids' lives. And I think that sort of high-touch crowdfunding model is really needed, and I think where there's a need, there is an opportunity. So I expect to see that really blossom.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Devin. And Stephanie, for you, what do you see as the future of crowdfunding, and what are your predictions for the near term and long term?
Sure. I guess in the scope of what we're doing at StartSomeGood, I think there's going to be two trends, particularly in different approaches and in different technologies. So I can definitely tell you that in terms of our platform, we're going through some exciting changes. So stay tuned and make sure to check out the website in June, July. There's going to be some new changes there. But especially in Asia, we're seeing great demand for, I guess as crowdfunding is growing here, great demand for alternative financing. So the traditional PayPal or bank finance model doesn't quite apply here in Asia, still cash-based in many ways. So we're looking at alternatives like SMS-based, supporting through SMS, for example. At Bitcoin, we actually had a few questions around whether we'll start off Bitcoin. So these cryptocurrencies might come into play as well. And we're exploring those at the moment. So that's a really exciting new realm that we can tap into, especially focusing more on social businesses. The other is in approaches. So I think crowdfunding is going to start collaborating with more industries, and we're already doing that through a couple of different things. So one initiative we have is called CrowdMatch, and this is where we actually partner with philanthropic groups or corporations looking to give their money away in a more efficient and effective manner, powered through crowdfunding. So it's really interesting because we've done this with a bank in Australia, for example, and they already give grants to the community. But what they wanted to do is see, if we provided a grant, would the community, members of the community, match it as well? And what this has resulted in is by supporting these community groups and recipients of these grants to run crowdfunding campaigns, the grant that they receive is actually doubled by the community, matched by the community when they put their idea out there through crowdfunding. So that's really exciting. We call it CrowdMatch, and it also helps track some of the best projects in the nation because there's a big call for applications, and people actually apply to be part of this. And their message is amplified through, the corporation or through the philanthropic group that's sponsoring. So that's one way we're doing it. We're also doing it in the form of competitions, pitching competitions, something like that, and we're interested in finding the best ideas and seeing how we can amplify that through crowdfunding. So I think the form is going to change. We're going to start working with different partners. It's going to change how philanthropy is done normally, that grant giving process. We're going to disrupt that model a little bit, I think, through crowdfunding. And I think that's exciting, and it's really a win-win situation for all.
Absolutely, and that is a great strategy. The whole matching contribution is just a very wise thing for anyone to do. If you can announce that someone is willing to match dollar for dollar, if you make a donation in the next 10 hours, it'll be matched dollar for dollar or 2 to 1. That's a very CrowdMatch is a great innovation.
I think it's also it's really great because that if a community is endorsing this idea, that they're actually putting their dollars towards an idea that they want to see happen in their country, in their community, then it's more likely to succeed when it takes off as well. And so I think it's already giving you that market validation. It's also, up to 3 times the amount they actually raise than they normally would receive as a grant. And so your impact is also, increased too. So yeah, we've trialed it. It's been wonderful. I hope we can do more of these.
Excellent, and with you at the helm of global partnerships, you will. I have no doubt in that. Devin, I actually wanted to ask one more follow-up on your equity, crowdfunding, social entrepreneurship question. It just popped into my head. Do you believe that as more unaccredited investors begin to invest, that it may not necessarily come from the accredited investors. The wealthy investors may not necessarily look at social good enterprises, even though that's changing too. But once the unaccredited investor, meaning anyone regardless of income, do you see the trend accelerating once the recently passed Regulation A is fully implemented?
I think there are a couple of things that are going on in the crowdfunding space that are going to change this dynamic to, in fact, as you say, bring in the ordinary investors. The first is Reg A+, and a lot of us in this space get excited about Reg A+. There's some are calling it crowdfunding. I'm a little bit reluctant to call that crowdfunding, even though it was passed with the crowdfunding bill in the Jobs Act. But it really is around, I believe, it's focused on larger offerings that are intended to be either public offerings or a bridge to a public offering or to going public. And I think it's wonderful and appropriate to have public offerings become smaller and allow ordinary investors to participate in them again. There was a time, well, when Microsoft went public back in the 80s, it went public with a market cap of $400 million. And all Americans had an opportunity to participate in the growth of that business as it became a multi-hundred billion dollar market cap business. On the other hand, Facebook didn't go public until it had a $100 billion market cap, which meant that the vast majority of the growth and its wealth creation opportunity, the ordinary investors were excluded and didn't have an opportunity to participate. So I think it's very important, this Reg A change that most people are referring to as Reg A+. I think it's just vitally important. It's very exciting. I can't wait to see it implemented. But it really isn't crowdfunding. What we see with what Stephanie's doing at StartSomeGood is a perfect example. It's startup money. It's relatively small amounts, and I think we will see that with equity crowdfunding as well. The money that comes from ordinary investors will not be massive, and you'll still need to have institutions play along to get massive dollars. But for raising $100,000, $200,000, maybe $500,000 from ordinary investors, that's really an exciting opportunity. And for social entrepreneurs, I think that will work very well, because people will take their philanthropic dollars and they'll say, wow, if I invested in Stephanie's business, for instance, and I may not get a tenfold return in 5 years like I would want with a traditional pre-IPO startup kind of investment. But if I take my philanthropic bucket of money and say, if I give her this money and she gives it back in 5 years, I can do it again. And it doesn't matter that I don't get a fivefold return, because the last time I donated it to anyone, it was just gone permanently. So I think we will see a lot of generosity manifest in the form of small equity investments in social entrepreneurs, social ventures. So I think it will be exciting to see. Really what it's going to require is Title III to be fully implemented, and I'm hoping we'll see that this year. I've got my fingers crossed.
I as well, Devin. Actually, that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to start RealityCrowdTV, was the whole equity crowdfunding. So thank you so much for that amazing explanation. And so, everyone, we've had an amazing show tonight. We had a lot of great viewers within the incubator and elsewhere watching. And I'm just going to give each of our guests the last word. And so, Stephanie, again, thank you for joining us. And please just, what are some last words for the audience to take away tonight?
So if you're curious about how StartSomeGood crowdfunding, still want to learn more, I hold a weekly webinar at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know it's a little bit late, But we're going to hopefully open up some better time slots for US, and that's 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Otherwise, we have a 9-part email crowdfunding course you can join if you go onto our website. StartSomeGood.com. Follow us on usually social entrepreneurs who run crowdfunding campaigns, and that's a great opportunity to follow out. And please do keep in touch. Just reach out to me. I love talking about crowdfunding. I love vision. On Twitter at @farrow, or just email me, Stephanie at StartSomeGood.com. I would love to hear from you. And Manolis, I'm definitely going to get more involved with Vicken. I'd love to dive in there and see what everyone's talking about and hopefully contribute. Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure, Stephanie, and again, thank you so much. The community will welcome you in open arms, so just dive right in. And Devin, last word for yourself.
Well, Manolis, thank you very much for the opportunity to be on the show with you tonight and with Stephanie. You know, I'm a huge fan of StartSomeGood, and so excited about the great things they're doing and the opportunity for social entrepreneurs to engage with her and the platform to do more good in the world. I'm excited too, as Stephanie is, about Vicken and the opportunity for entrepreneurs to go and collaborate with their peers, because crowdfunding is, as well developed as it may seem to me, is still really an early stage thing. If you start the clock running for most people with Kickstarter, we haven't even hit a decade of crowdfunding. Now, there are a couple of sites that go back earlier than that, but quite frankly, most people would measure this beginning of the industry as being less than 10 years old. So a peer-to-peer network, the peer-to-peer network you've created, Manolis, at Vicken, is really invaluable, because there are so many things to learn from people who are out there trying this right now. Every day people are learning new things, new tactics, new strategies, and finding out what works and what doesn't. So this is a great platform, incredibly valuable, and I love the price that you've set on it, Manolis. Free. It's hard to argue with free, so I commend you for doing that, and look forward to being an active member of that community.
Thank you both for your kind words, Devin. Thank you so much. Once again, this has been an amazing episode on crowdfunding for social good. To the audience, we cannot do what we do without you. We do this for you, and we're grateful that you are entertaining us and watching us this evening. So until next time, dream it, believe it, achieve it. Have a good night, everyone.